In a world filled with sharks, bears, and killer bees, one man is brave enough to stay indoors to bring you the latest in gaming, movie, and pop culture news. That man is Tom Awesome, and this is the Outside is Overrated podcast.
Hello and welcome to Outside is Overrated Game Club. Today, we're typing frantically into the show notes as we're diving into Final Fantasy Tactics by Japanese developer Square Enix. This is a remaster of my all-time favorite game. Does this modern remake live up to the hype? I'm your host, Tom Sedlacek, and joining me for the discussion tonight are the Professor, Mike Mathwig.
Evening.
Munch Time, John Munch.
Howdy, howdy.
The Hobby Box, Joe Burns.
Heyo.
And I set that up like there's going to be someone else. There isn't. It's just the four of us. I just forgot how the word "and" works. Outside is Overrated is presented by Premier Health. Check out their website at premierhealthmn.com. That's premierhealthmn as in Minnesota.com. In this monthly standalone segment, we play a game with our podcast community and invite all of our Patreon supporters to join the discussion. If you want to join us, support Outside is Overrated on Patreon at patreon.com/OiO. You can help for as little as $2 a month. I'll start by setting expectations for what we're going to talk about. Tactics is a remaster of a groundbreaking and sometimes polarizing classic title from 1997. Here's what we're going to discuss today in our Part 1 discussion. We're going to talk about how the job system shapes strategy and storytelling. We're going to talk about our impressions from the first two chapters of the remaster. We're going to talk about whether this new version captures the spirit of the original. And that's about it. This game was released in September 2025 and is sitting at a Metacritic score of 88. Expectations are high, but nostalgia can be a tricky beast. In Final Fantasy Tactics, you play as young noble Ramza Beowulf, navigating the political chaos of the War of Lions, a story of loyalty, betrayal, and how history forgets those who fight for what's right. You command small squads on tactical, grid-based battlefields. The challenge lies in mastering dozens of classes and abilities while navigating a dense story full of political and religious intrigue. Before we get into the story, let's set the stage. John, what is your history with Final Fantasy Tactics and with the Final Fantasy series in general?
So, I still remember the first time seeing and playing like a Final Fantasy game. Final Fantasy IV, playing it through at my friend's house. Didn't even own a Super Nintendo. Like to the point where like these games hit me where like I was going over to my friend's house to just play this game and like not talking to him. I mean, it's a role playing game. I'm like, yeah, cool, man. Final Fantasy, we got it going on here, right? And since then, I've played every version, every little side game, everything that's come out for it. And Tactics is probably my second favorite out of any Final Fantasy game out there, only taken down by Final Fantasy VI. So, you know, and even though it's number 2, I probably have the most time out of all Final Fantasies put into Tactics with the number of times I've replayed it, right? How many times I'm just grinding for jobs as a kid, playing it on the PSP version, right? And now this version. So definitely playing this remaster is kind of like going back to something that is really amazing and nostalgic and familiar.
Yeah, I feel very similarly. Mike, what about you?
Well, I started with Final Fantasy a little later. I started with 6, but I really got into the series in the PlayStation era when they had 7, 8, and 9 all on the PS1, and I played all the major Final Fantasy since. And then I got into this game because of the Final Fantasy connection and because, I don't know if you remember, but in that era, Squaresoft was on such a roll. They just had game after game after game that was highly rated and successful. And I just looked at my PS1 shelf, and besides my copy of Tactics, which I bought in 1997, I have a whole row of PS1 Squaresoft RPGs I still own because they were all, you know, the big ones, Xenogears and Chrono Cross and Parasite Eve, and the Final Fantasies. That's what Squaresoft was in PS1 era. They were just can't miss gaming.
Yeah, that's wild. And thanks for bringing up like that catalog. Like it's so fascinating what a role they were on. Now, Burns, we have never talked about Final Fantasy on the show. We have never discussed a thing. We didn't play a game each month for an entire year on the podcast. So I know that you hate Square Enix with a burning, fiery passion. Why exactly do you think they, let's see, I'm going to read exactly what you wrote in the show notes. Why do they suck so hard, Burns?
Yeah, that's exactly how I feel about Final Fantasy and Square Enix. As someone who's probably been the biggest apologist on this podcast for everything Square Enix does. And yeah, I don't know. I'm not going to go too much into my love of Final Fantasy because I think I've talked about it ad nauseum on the podcast. Probably my favorite franchise in gaming. I'll play every game at release basically from here on out because I don't know. I just love Final Fantasy. I'm always interested in what they're doing. I've owned Tactics since when it came out, basically. But you know what, 97, that would have put me at like eighth grade, ninth grade, somewhere through there. And yeah, I couldn't get past the third battle. Didn't realize that you could grind out fights to level things up in order to get past that battle. And so I was just like, this game's impossible. I can't figure it out. So I didn't play it again until I streamed it on Twitch 2 years ago, something like that, 3 years ago. And I made it a little over halfway through that playthrough before I kind of stopped streaming. And so yeah, I'm looking forward to, and I've been enjoying, for the most part, playing through the Ivalice Chronicles with this remaster release. So.
I am so stoked to be talking about this game. Final Fantasy Tactics, no hyperbole, is my all-time favorite game. I beat it when I went to college, like when I was too introverted to like go out and talk to people. I just sat in my dorm room playing Final Fantasy Tactics nonstop. My first Final Fantasy was 7. I've played, at this point, at least a little bit of every game in the series, and Burns and I talked about 12 of them over a year on the podcast. I've seen credits on 1, 7, 9, 13, and 14, Realm Reborn. So diving into Final Fantasy Tactics, the Ivalice Chronicles, the first chapter introduces us to Ramza's early days as a squire serving under his noble family's banner. Alongside your friend Delita, you meet Argath and get swept into a web of noble politics and rebellion. Chapter 1 lays the groundwork for the War of the Lions and sets up Delita's motivations. Mike, what were your impressions of the opening act in this remaster?
I mean, it feels like a good remaster should, in the sense that it's improved in subtle ways, well, more than subtle ways with the graphics, but it keeps the feel and the spirit of the prior version. I mean, when I kicked this game open and the music kicks in and I saw those graphics, I felt exactly like it was 1997 and I was playing the game I just bought on my 20-inch TV I owned at the time. I mean, in playing through it, it still feels exactly like Final Fantasy Tactics, just with a lot of quality of life improvements.
Yeah, I mean, the quality of life improvements, I think, are fantastic in this version. Playing through the original PlayStation version, it can be pretty clunky at times, and so it's definitely nice to have a lot of just the streamlining things, and things just be a little bit more friendly and a little bit better explained on the screen. There's maybe some leaps and bounds they could have taken to maybe explain even more, which is crazy for me to say, seeing as how there's just like menus upon menus of explaining like almost every aspect of everything in the game, which is nice, but definitely daunting as well. But you can also tell, I also really enjoyed that they added, I was talking about the description of like a lot of the game and how it works, but they also like added the encyclopedia where you get an idea of like all the characters and it evolves and updates as you go through the story. And I love stuff like that. You can definitely tell that Creative Studio 3, who worked on this remaster, they definitely took that infusion from Final Fantasy 16 with the Active Time lore and kind of adapted that to work within this. It's interesting that this is a game that studio worked on as well. Granted, I'm sure it was parts of a different team than worked on Final Fantasy 16, because there are a lot of similarities between the storyline, I think, of Final Fantasy Tactics and Final Fantasy 16. And just like the setting has a lot of similarities, a lot of like the political kind of like shuffling and backstabbing and everything like that. So yeah, I mean, I've really enjoyed it so far. When we look at Chapter 1 specifically, I think that is like the weakest part of the game. I think the story stuff is decent, minus Argath, but it's still just a grind to get through that first part of the act. And I definitely just ran headlong into that third battle again and got humbled and got frustrated. And then it's like, all right, well, I guess I just got to wander around and grind a bit to get to that point. And then it's like the next time I fought it, it was a cakewalk. And then it took a little while to get to another battle that was like a little more difficult, and so it's just I don't know. It's a little crazy how the difficulty spikes kind of happen, and especially so early in this game. But I guess it's staying true to the original.
John, would you like to defend the honor of our beloved classic, or should I take the first stab at poking back at Burns?
Go ahead.
All right. Burns, I disagree with you. I think Act 1 is phenomenal. Like, I get the difficulty spikes. Like, my greatest appreciation for the remake of this game is the skills that I still have from the original. Because, like, I remember that third fight, too. Like, that marked me. That was a stall-out point in this game for a long time until a friend showed me, like, how the jobs actually work. I'm like, oh, okay, I don't just have to have squares and chemists. Well, that opens up the toolbox quite a bit. So I had that same mindset coming in, and, like, I chugged probably 100 million billion potions playing through the first act. And it's like, it didn't feel tremendously satisfying, but I also wasn't super slowed down by those initial spikes in difficulty. Towards the end of the first act, like when you get to the it's the fort, right, that has the elevation on both sides, like, and Meludia is like the person you have to defeat. That one ate my lunch for a little while. But I don't know, I'd say the game is hard, but I never found it in the first act to be frustratingly so.
Yeah, I mean, Joey, you're just wrong. I mean, you're just wrong, right? I mean, I've played all the translations. I've played all these. You know, this so far has actually been like kind of my favorite translation. I think the voice acting to me shines. I love the voice acting in it. Mainly because I tend to zoom through stories, and I've liked it because I'm just like, hey, let me listen to it, and I've enjoyed the voice actors on it, and just kind of drawn me in, and it's hooked. And I always like a flashback narrative. So Act 1 to me, the story, you know, everything with it, you really get the key moments in Act 1, right? That drives the narrative for so much of the game, right? And go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, I got to go back to something you said, the voice acting. I think the voice acting for the main characters in the scenes is great, and I enjoy that. But there is a voice act for like every time you move, every time you shuffle, every time you get hit. There is a lot of voice acting grunts and minor things, and those drove me crazy.
Well, and I will say, and the one thing that they took out is the death scream. That is the one thing, the one sound effect they removed, and I'm like,
why?
No. That was like, I can't believe they removed the death screen. Like, that is my favorite. I wish I was playing on PC just so I could mod that one thing back in, because that is the best. Is like when you kind of like that you know, Wilhelm scream or whatever. It's great. Joey, I do have to disagree with you about like that third battle. And if I remember correctly, the third battle is the one with the archer on top, right?
Yeah, Dorter.
It's the one where you have multiple archers and you have multiple black mages that you're fighting against. Yep.
Right. Yeah. And to me, it's a key, like, it's starting to teach you, this is how you play this game. Hey, look, man, you got to get up there and take out that archer, or he's just going to sit here and pepper you and pepper you and pepper you. And maybe it's because I've played this, like, every battle I played since I've been playing through this game is like, oh, I remember this one. Oh, I remember this one. Get up to the top and kill that archer before he messes me up. Right? And, like, so, like, there is that little bit of like, they're teaching you certain things about the game, but they don't do it in a way where it's like, I'm gonna, like, you know, ease you into this and teach you. It's like, no, I'm gonna hit you with a baseball bat in the face until you learn type of teaching, because it will kill you really fast if you don't know to get up there and take out that archer. And if you don't know the little nuances of, like, you know, how you target and how you target characters and how you can be targeted and how you can, you know, look at the things of like charge time and those things to understand like how the magic system works. So it's a steep learning curve there, but it's there because it's teaching you pivotal things about the rest of the game.
I mean, I'll agree with that to some extent. I think in this version of the game, things are a lot more plainly sort of diagrammed to you in different places. So you get a better idea of what you have to do to unlock certain jobs. You have an idea of a lot more. You can move around a lot more and see what your targets would be a lot more easily. And so I think it makes it a lot easier that way. I think in the original version of the game, it was a pain and it was terrible. Still, it's one of those things, though. Like, one of the frustrating things that it does is it's like, the archers that you're fighting in that have bows that you don't get for like 4 more fights. And it's like, I'm just sitting here with these stupid bow guns that can shoot 3 spots in front of me. And these guys can just arc these arrows like, 10 freaking spots away when they're standing on top of the building. It's just like, come on, it just is annoying at that point of the game. And it's like, the first time you roll into the battle and everybody has like more health than you, you're like, oh, that's okay. And then, you get hit and it takes off like 3/4 of your health. Plus you got freaking Argath running off into Timbuktu, God knows where, just getting his ass beat. And you're just like, come on, man. Like, how am I supposed to try to make this work? So it does get frustrating pretty early on for somebody that hasn't played the game like a zillion times and doesn't have all the background that they would need to sort of attack it in the right way.
Couple of things to go back to on there. Like, the bows, absolutely. That drove me crazy. Like, because they have traditional, like, compound bows or composite bows or, like, bows that you would expect to use. And the bows that you start with only shoot in a straight line. And, like, if, God forbid, one of your characters is, like, standing on the wrong side, like, or, like, standing in the way because you can't shoot over, you'll only shoot through. And then you shoot your own dude in the back and further handicap yourself in the fight. That's super frustrating. John, do you want to add on to that point, or should I go to my next thing quick?
Yeah, so just so everyone knows, it's crossbows, right? Versus
bow guns
like
specifically,
longbows.
but yes.
Bow guns versus like longbows. And like that's just an equipment thing. And those are the little things about tactics that you don't know that like, oh, well, why does this bow only shoot straight? Like, oh, because I don't have like a long bow, I have a little hand crossbow deal, right? And I get better damage, but I can't arc my shot, right? So like those are the things where like you start to kind of, pick up over time that are not very well like displayed, right? Or not shared very well.
I think the other thing though is it's frustrating that it still takes you like 3 more story battles after that before the outfitter finally unlocks actually any other ranged weapon other than what you start with. And so it's like, I think that's the other annoyance with it, is it's just like it takes so long to get those extra tools to have at your disposal. And so it makes it that much more frustrating to like build up job points and just sort of grind through levels, even if you're just doing some of the side, the random encounters and things like that. So I think that's one of the things, like, it's funny because in chapter 2 you just get so much better, like people fighting alongside you that are just that much better at killing things than in that first act, where it's like the people that are beside you are a hindrance. Like they are just outright frustrating to have in your party.
You've got Delita and Argath tagging along with you, and I wanted to ask you guys about this because like they were less than worthless. They were anything but an asset for me. Like, they wouldn't attack anything. They'd basically run to an edge of the map and just wait to get shot to death. And it's like, oh, well, I wish I could bring in like another party member so that this fight was kind of even, because that was infuriating for me.
So when I did that archer battle, both Delita and Argath ran up to get the archer, and I was like, sweet. They just took all his damage, killed him, and so I could just focus on the rest of the battle. So it made it super easy for me. But that is one thing that, like, throughout this game, the guest characters that you get, their AI, not fantastic, not great. And
let me poke at something real quick there, John. Do you remember that being the case in the older versions of the game too? Because I remember not actively hating the companions. Is that just something I overlooked or forgot in my memory?
I think it's always been kind of that, like, why'd they do that? Like, it's hit or miss, right? And I think, we brought it up in the Discord that there was, there's a couple battles where, like, if your guest characters go first and this and that, or someone's running away and they get killed, it's game over, right? And if they just do something stupid, right?
For
you
example,
can't do anything about it.
I had one, it was actually Act 3, but I had one character that you meet for the first time, and, like, he's being chased by a bunch of guys, and, like, I'm on one side of the map, the bad guys are all on the back side of the map. For whatever reason, the first 10 times I played that mission, he would only run directly into the middle of the bad guys. Like, he wouldn't come back to, like, where the healers are and where the range damage is and, like, do anything to alleviate the pounding that he's taking. He's like, oh, no, you know what? I think I want to be right in the middle of this pack of bad guys chasing me. I give up. Screw you, Tom.
That was true originally, though. That I remember that fight the first time through. He did exactly the same stupid stuff. There's some randomness in the RNG as far as what those characters do on their first turn. And the only way I ever found to manipulate it a little bit is depending how you place your characters on the map, it will affect what the computer characters and the NPCs will do on their turn. Don't ask me what goes into it. I could never figure it out, but it would change depending on how you arrange your starting group.
So, for example, I had an archer in that third battle, and if the archer was in the far back corner starting spot, Delita would still go up to the top. Argath would just run, he'd go up on the roof, but then he'd like run towards the other guys. But then, no matter what, even though those two were closer, the archer on top of the building would still shoot at your archer. And at that point in the game, you don't have a lot of items to add HP to your dude, so it's like 2 shots and your archer's basically dead. And so you're just like, come on. Like, shoot those guys that have that much more extra health and stuff like that. So I don't know. It's trying to find the quirks as to what they focus on and how each of them work differently. It takes some getting used to, that's for sure. And I think the NPCs, the guest characters, they end up having different sort of focuses depending upon what the map is also. Because there's times in Chapter 2 where Mustadio is like MVP, just like not getting shot but shooting everything in the map. And then it's like, oh, no, there's this other one where he just runs in the middle of like 4 dudes. And it's just like, all right, you're a pincushion. You're going to be dead. I'll raise you up. You just get killed again. I raise you up. You just get killed again. It's just like, and it kind of fits with the story of that mission, I guess, to some extent. But
yeah,
it's
I think it's called the
like,
1,000 Deaths of Mustadio.
Yeah.
Pretty much. And so it's just like, I don't know. I'll let you lay dead until I have like 1 or 2 enemies left, and then I'll bring you up. I have another big gripe about the battle system, but we could maybe get into that later if we wanted to keep moving forward. I don't know. It's up to you.
Yeah, let me talk about a couple more things out of Chapter 1 first. I didn't realize just how many potions I drank playing through this game the first time. I was conscious of it this time, and like on the one hand, it's great because every potion you chug is job points as long as your damage is like, great, let's get some new abilities and like start fighting back on these guys. And I just was surprised by how many times I had to just chug potions through the entire first act. One thing that I didn't fully appreciate about Ramza when I originally played this game as like a college freshman, I didn't value how much he questioned everything, questions everyone's motivation. Like, why are we fighting? Why are you doing this? Why can't you let go? Why is this a problem? And playing it now as an adult, like, I really enjoyed Ramza as a character. And it's like, oh, I value him questioning everything.
He's just like one of your daughters. Why? Why? Why?
Same amount of questions, less tantrums. So, pretty rad. John, I think you wanted to talk about why Argath was such a great character and why he's your favorite. Let me reframe that. There's a big emotional scene at the end of Act 1. Like, does that still pack an emotional punch for you? The scene at the windmill with Delita and Tetra and Argath and Ramza, like, I love that scene back in the day. Does it still pack an emotional punch in 2025?
For me, yeah, and even more so because, like, really catching and, like, I think, what this version does is giving you the encyclopedia and the ability to kind of just really take your time and go back and read about these characters, right? Like, really gives you that ability to have a clear grasp of, like, the 50-year war and the War of the Lions and everything that's happened in the past, everything that's composing in the story. And not only is those, and I'm not gonna have any spoilers. Not only is like the action that's taken by Argath there in the end of chapter 1, so just like, I can't believe they're doing this, right? I can't believe this is the action. But the fact that Ramza's brother is the one who said, do it, right? Like, I mean, it's not like, Argath is pulling the trigger, but he's not making the decisions. It's Ramza's family. And, like, to me, like, at a point in my life with family drama and things that have happened for me, like, I'm like, man, I feel you, Ramza. I get this. And boy, this is like what that decision they made to like do what they did in chapter 1 is just, to me, so impactful for like how the rest of the game unfolds.
Yeah, and I thought it was an awesome way that they told the story, with most of Act 1 being a flashback and then bring you back to that moment at Orbone Monastery. Joey, Mike, anything you guys want to add about the narrative through Act 1?
No, I agree with what you said. I just want to call it again, the translation is so much better. I didn't play the PSP version, which I think had already an improved translation. So the only translation I've seen is the original PS1 version, and this one is just light years better. And it makes all of these story beats hit a lot harder because the dialogue makes more sense than it did previously. Especially Argath, he was always obnoxious and hateful, but now his dialogue is that 20% more vicious and disgusting. It makes you hate him just that much more.
Do you recall if he calls you a milksop churl in the original translation?
I think so, actually. I think that is one of his, basically. I think that carried through.
That is a remarkable phrase.
Some of the other stuff was a lot more confused.
Yeah, the old milksop churl. Burns, anything you want to add on, or should we talk about the battle system, job system?
I mean, Argath is just, he's so one note. Like, it's like, why don't you dump this dude so much sooner? It's like, it's like everything he says is just terrible. You're like, and then you find out at the end, it's like, oh, he is a Nazi. Oh, okay. Yeah. It's like, come on. Like, you kind of had an idea here. Maybe you should have done something about it, how many other minutes ago, days ago, before you're just like, oh, yeah, we just let him hang around and he ended up being a real bad guy.
Weird.
He's like our generation's Draco Malfoy, or who's the king from not the king, but the jerk from Game of Thrones, the Kid King. I can't remember his name.
Joffrey.
Yeah, he's our generation's Joffrey, right? He has blonde hair, this completely horrible individual, rotten to the core. You just like have to hate him, right?
Yeah, probably the child of incest too.
The thing about that, though. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I was just making an incest joke. You can go ahead, Mike.
Well, I hate to interrupt something so important, but my point about that is, up to this point in the game, you can't do anything about Argath because at this point in the game, Ramza has no actual control of his own path and actions, really. He's just, doing what he's told to do as a, member of this group and as a, younger son of a royal house. It isn't until basically that point that we're talking about that, he kind of gets a decision made that he has to break away. So he couldn't do anything previously. As part of his social standing and his position, there was nothing he could do about Argath until that point, really.
Yeah, and I'm going to jump down in the show notes to the next thing after the battle system, and we'll come back to the battle system after talking about Act 2. I think this is just a natural transition. So after the events of Chapter 1, Ramza abandons his noble name and he forges a new path forward as a common mercenary. John, is Ramza still a compelling protagonist in 2025, and how well does this story hold up for new players? Like you and me and Mike.
Yeah. I mean, considering everything going on right now, in our political landscape, I think that dealing with corrupt and powerful individuals manipulating the people is probably, pretty extremely poignant and compelling. there's that we've already hit on Game of Thrones being in here a little bit, so it kind of is familiar from that avenue, right? You got families at war, a fight for the royal throne, and I love that bigger story you have going, that you get these smaller characters that are all wrapped up in it, and I think it holds up extremely well. And then you also have that added, those compendiums, those things in the mix that allow you to give that additional flavor text into these as well. So I think it holds up for new players. It's the most approachable it's been. I think that this type of story is way more familiar in just like the general public, with Game of Thrones being so popular, right? It actually like fits better today than it did during its original release.
Yeah, Mike, how would you play off that?
I mean, the Game of Thrones comparison is apt, but I would argue more that this is really a take on something like the War of the Roses, crossed with a really strange Japanese view of the New Testament and the Catholic Church. But that becomes way more explicit in later chapters, so that's something we will, I'm sure, discuss at greater length in part 2 of the discussion. But I agree, this story hits harder due to today's climate, and the better translation makes that very clear.
Bernsey?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen the game all the way through yet, but just think of how much conflict in the game would be resolved if people just listened to each other. Like, it's like the whole first chapter is just like Delita and Ramza, like the second half of chapter 1, just talking past each other. It's just like, hey, one of you shut up and listen to the other person, and maybe you'll realize you guys both kind of believe the same thing still. Nothing's really changed other than Argath being around. I don't know. As the story has gone on, I mean, I think the story in chapter 2 is where it really starts to sort of draw you into everything. Having only played the first 2 chapters of the game and like very little into chapter 3, I don't know where everything's going. Ramza still to me doesn't really stand out as that interesting of a character yet. Maybe and I'm sure there is a lot more that kind of comes in, but at this point in the game, Delita is much more of an interesting character than Ramza is. And I mean, you just look at it, a year goes by, and it's like Delita has like all these special abilities, and Ramza's still just doing the same thing he was a year ago, apparently. It's just kind of like, all right, well, that guy got better real fast. And so it's just like, I don't know. I think Ramza still through chapter 2 until like the very end, still just sort of is like a leaf on the wind and kind of just blowing where things are sort of steering him instead of actually trying to like grab the rudder and move in a direction. I don't know if that ever changes. And so that's the one thing that I'm kind of interested to see how that develops moving forward in the story. Because he's still very much so just like reactionary to the story. And he's kind of in the places to make a stand when he needs to, but he's not really directing things or towards any sort of goal or something, so to speak.
I think your criticism is interesting, and I see where you're coming from. What I think is interesting about Ramza in Chapter 2 is he's kind of finding his footing. Like, he swore off his noble name. Like, he basically gave away all of the privilege that he's ever had in his life, and now he's trying to find his own path. And I appreciate that he didn't just, like, hit the ground running and, like, take off like a lightning bolt towards ending the War of the Lions at that point. Like, it's kind of a meandering path. I get that. But I appreciated the way that I appreciated his journey from where he started as the noble in, like, the Prelude chapter in Chapter 1 to where he is as a mercenary in Chapter 2.
Yeah, I think part of it though is he definitely, because his world got upended just as much as Delita's did at the end of Chapter 1, and it seems like Delita kind of pushed forward with a purpose in a direction. And obviously, I don't know anything as to what happened with Delita throughout that time, other than the times where he's bopped into the story in Chapter 2. And it seems like Ramza just has a lot of catching up to do because he just hung around with Gafgarian for a while and just kind of did whatever he needed to do. Whereas Delita was just like, all right, all this crap happened to me. I hate everything. I'm moving towards this, right? So I think that's interesting, and I'm interested to see kind of how that all weaves together, especially since the narration kind of tells you that Delita is remembered as the hero in the future and Ramza's forgotten. And so I'm curious kind of how all of that comes to a fore. I could very much kind of see this being something where it's like Ramza actually did a lot more than maybe history gave him credit for. And, some of the stuff that Delita in history is remembered for doing, Ramza maybe was key to accomplishing that or whatnot. But yeah, I don't know. I'm interested. It definitely, the first half of the game definitely has a really good setup for where things are going. And I'm sure things get, politically even more convoluted than it already is.
And I think, when you start looking at Ramza versus Delita, right? And like, Ramza is just slow to launch because he's got the Beowulf name, right? He is the rich kid, right? Like naive too, like so naive. Like my brothers could never be bad. My brother, like no, we're the Beowulfs. We wouldn't do anything horrible.
He's like
right?
the cake eater in Mighty Ducks.
He just like story beat after story beat, right? And like Ramza with like this optimism, like one kind of beat that I get tired of in this game is like start a battle and then someone says you're Ramza, I need to kill you, and he's like, no, if you just listen to me, I'm not the bad guy, right? And like no one ever does, right? And as I'm playing through it, like that's Ramza's whole thing, like hey man, no one's gonna listen to you because everybody has their own like horrible motives because these are all horrible people, even your brothers, and you guys are going to have to do something different. And I think Delita just comes to that realization much, much sooner because of his circumstances of not being highborn, right? And you see that in the relationship with Delita, Argith, and Ramza. Where Ramza is a little bit softer to Delita and like lets things slide, and Delita's like, dude, you're a jerk. No, knock it off, right? Like you can kind of see that, and then at that loss that Delita has at the end of chapter 1, like that's the catalyst that just pushes him. He's like, I'm completely done, right? And Ramza's actually the only thing that Delita still holds on to. So it's interesting to watch Ramza through chapter 2. I feel like come out of that, naivety and like really start to understand, oh, this is the world I'm in, and I'm gonna have to do things way, way different. I can't just go run and hide and be a sellsword, right? I'm gonna have to like step in and make my own name, right, and make the Beowulf name that I want be the one that actually is true. I like this game.
Pretty good. Pretty good. One thing that I want to point out, playing this game as a 44-year-old as opposed to playing it for the first time as like an 18-year-old, I have a much greater appreciation for the act of storytelling now. I love how the first act was set in the past and the second act brought you back to the present. Like if you can get past the difficulty curve of this game, I think it is just such a gem of political and religious intrigue. Anything else you guys want to talk about characters before we jump into the battle system? Job system? I know words. Yeah. Well, the absolute heart of Final Fantasy Tactics is and has always been its job system. It's deep, it's flexible, and it is punishingly addictive. So let's talk about character builds. Burnsy, how did you approach character building when you first played this game on stream a couple of years ago, and like how has that changed as you play the remaster? And then we'll go into a long dissertation from like the old guard.
I mean, I honestly couldn't tell you what strategy I used either when I first played it. Obviously, the one I used when I first played it was no good. And, short-lived enough that I never really had a chance to develop a strategy. And to be honest, I really don't remember what I focused on when it came to when I streamed it, when I was playing it on Twitch either. But so I probably didn't have much of a strategy, and it was just sort of like, and then at that point too, I wasn't as clear, and I was trying to stay in the dark. I wasn't looking up like what I needed to do to try to unlock different jobs. So in that PS1 version, it was a lot more aimless, and it's just like, all right, well, I'm gonna level this up until I, see that I have the chance to change to something else. Hopefully, I got lucky and have the right things leveled at the right times. But now, since this is my first time going all the way through the game, I still don't really have a grand strategy. I guess the layout that I tend to have is, especially after I got through the first few battles, is I would always have one offensive caster, and then I would have one archer, or somebody else that was ranged. So having two ranged characters, and then everybody else being melee things, and then basically just trying to level things up, and then jump to a new job, and then kind of backfill things with people that are kind of right behind them, so to speak. I have my core of about 6 people that I bounce between. So one of them will sit out, or 2 of them, depending on how many guest characters are in there, will sit out, per round, and then I'll just kind of, mix them back in and stuff. It's been a while since I've actually used a chemist in a real battle because I don't know, you just kind of get past that pretty quickly. And once everybody can use potions on other people or on themselves, then you can just kind of leave them in the dust. So yeah, I don't know. It's been fun though. I've been messing around closer to the end of Act 2, messing around a lot more with Dragoon and Summoner, because I didn't really do a whole lot with Summoner when I played on Twitch. And so that's been interesting. It's just some of those, and Geomancer, it's just some of those jobs are just a very slow burn. You really got to grind job points until you actually can unlock enough stuff to make them worthwhile, especially Geomancer, because it's of course you unlock the 3 things, and then those aren't any of the terrains that you're in your next battle. So you're just all right, well, guess I'm hitting things with my axe.
Yay, axes. So, yeah. If I can give you one tip, Burns, don't sleep on the chemists. They have a lot of utility. Being able to chuck the items is huge. Yep. Plus, they can shoot with guns, so they have a lot of range for attack too. They're just very versatile, and I like using chemists until everyone has auto potion, and then I move on to a new chemist. Yeah, and it's now that it's once you get past, because it's not until the second half of chapter 2 that you actually unlock guns. And so it's now that I actually can buy some, then I can see the utility of adding them back into the rotation a little bit more. And I know for some of the jobs later on, you do have to get chemist up a little bit on some things. I think, yeah. So yeah, I probably will work some of those characters in. I have people that I just send out on errands that are chemists that I could just start trying to level up a little bit. And so yeah, I'll probably have a little bit more balance with some of that stuff now that I have more tools that I can use with those classes. It's just early on when all they can really use is daggers. It's just they're really just worthless. And then they become pig cushions because it's just everybody tries to shoot them first, it feels or attack them first, as opposed to anything else. If they have range, it's they're kind of hosed. So that's kind of another reason why I went away from them a little bit. Yeah, and I guess I mostly avoided them until I had guns, so, do what you gotta do. John, you're playing a remaster of one of your all-time favorite games. Strategy back in the day versus strategy now.
I tried to do things different. I really did, right? My strategy has always been, I'm Joey, you're kind of spot on, at least how I do things, right? It's always you got your 2 melee, you got your 2 that do healing or magic or this or that, so you can go down the trees, because it's kind of how they design it, right? Your chemist leads you into more magic users, and if you're your squire, it leads you elsewhere, right? And to me, okay, that makes sense. These guys have high brave, put them this way. These guys have high faith, put them that way. Ramza, you're the guy who flip-flops in the middle because I want you to be everything, depending upon what fun thing I want to do. And that's really how I've always played, right? But very, very quickly, right, my old patterns came back, and it's well, okay, I need to do, and then I want to be careful because I don't want to give you, Joey, I don't want to ruin the game for you because I could tell you things that would completely just break the game. And like, to me, that is the fun. I love the fact that like, I know that like, okay, I've done step A, B, and C, and now I have my team where things are just like completely broken. And like, I will just steamroll maps, and like, I have no worry about dying because I have, my calculator, or it's the arithmetic now, right? And I can do all kinds of crazy stuff with that, right? And like, but I will say, like, the one thing that even, because I'm almost done. I'm in chapter 4, and even at this point, I still use the Squire as my sub job 98% of the time. That is the one thing that, like, to me never changes, because especially for like my physical characters, because like those, like the shout ability or whatever it is, yell, where you can like basically make yourself stronger, right? That is huge. Tom, I know you're probably going to say something about Tailwind, which is awesome, right? And gets even better when you get shout, because they do something cool where Ramza's Squire stuff changes, and I use that constantly on all my characters, mainly because like, oh, okay, I'm gonna let the enemy come to me, and that will usually give me 2 turns to like yell twice, and then now I'm like that much stronger.
One thing that I forgot to set up for this part of the discussion specifically is like the job system has something like 20 jobs in it. Each job has its own like kit of things. So like a time mage can cast haste, can cast slow, can cast immobile. The geomancer summons different types of terrain to attack your enemy. You have knights who fight with swords, you have your chemists who do potions. So like anytime you equip a job, you're working towards acquiring all of that job's specific abilities. But as a secondary thing for that character, you can equip any other set of abilities from any character that you've been working on. So if you start as a Squire with Ramza and then you move on to something else, you get his new skill set as like his primary thing, but you can also set your Squire skills that you work so hard to acquire as your secondary. And that you can mix and match any combo of classes that way.
And the more powerful stuff, actually, and the things that I focus on when I'm looking at the jobs, because normally, like when I'm playing this game, I'm using attack. Unless I'm a magic user, I'm using attack 99% of the time, right? If I'm a geomancer, I'm very rarely using like the geomancer stuff. I'm using their axe, right?
We play this game very differently, my friend.
But what I tend to focus on is the 3 other skills you can get. So like you have like your 2 like my job skills, and then you have a reaction, like a counter skill. You have like just a passive skill, and you have a movement skill, right? So those 3 things are super important, and like understanding, well, yeah, I can go ahead and like Tom, you mentioned auto potion. Great. I'm going to go snag auto potion. I'm going to be a chemist for a little bit because I really want to have auto potion because that can keep me out of a jam. And I'm going to go be a thief for a little bit because I want to get movement +2 because that's huge. Now I can run around the board that much faster and either get away or get close to something. And I want to be a knight for a little bit because I want to have, parry because it's better than counter, right? So like those are the things that I would normally like jump around and snag, so that like now like my sub abilities are so powerful, it makes me that much more sustainable no matter what class I pick.
So it's interesting because originally I thought it's like, oh, okay, I can just kind of set and forget some of these things. So it's like I always want to have either like counter tackle or parry, and it's like if I unlocked parry, it'll probably be parry with characters. But then if you start looking through some of the nuances of things, it's like if you are using axes, you can't parry with axes. So if you had parry on your reaction ability, it's never going to work. And so it was interesting to kind of see that as I was looking through some things in the descriptions of like all the different weapons and stuff like that, weapon types, because then it's like, oh, okay, well then that kind of changes how I would do this when I'm this class and I'm using this type of weapon with this character. So it's like crazy how deep a lot of it gets. And there are just like a lot of different options and a lot of different ways that you can balance things out. But then again, I think it's one of those things also where, so like for instance, Ramza, like I've always kept his Squire abilities as his second abilities compared to whatever job I'm jumping into, just because like having Tailwind and having a few other things from that is just useful use, like chant, to be able to heal someone, even though you're losing some life for Ramza. I mean, Ramza tends to have the most HP out of all my people because he's the highest level of all my people. So it's like I can usually handle that if it's going to save someone. So, so I don't know. I think it's interesting. It is interesting, all of the different options that you have and different ways that you can approach things. But don't sleep on the Geomancer skills, because those can be freaking amazing at times if you have the right one unlocked for like the terrain that you're on.
Yeah, I like Geomancer a lot too, but you two have both excuse me, both mentioned Tailwind now. For me, that is the most important part in the game, and it is the reason that I was able to beat this game the first time through, because I know that later in the game there are some incredibly punishing battles. Sometimes Ramza is fighting them all by his onesie, and like the way that I found to get through those incredibly difficult fights at the end of the game, it doesn't feel super satisfying, but I'd have auto potion so that he'd stay alive a little bit longer, and I would just cast Tailwind, or I think it was it Yell back in the day? But it's an ability that boosted speed by 1 point, and I would cast that and run away from the enemies until basically I was the Flash, and I'd be activating like 3-4 times before they did. So then like I'd run in, hit, maybe take one hit, then heal, hit, and just like full on Flash mode. So like I think it's a cheap way to win, but that's how I got through it the first time, and like because of that, I am not taking those Squire abilities off of Ramza. That is my safety net in any given fight.
That's the brilliance of this game, though, is there's an almost infinite number of possibilities for what you can do to set up abilities and equipment and job classes on these characters to fit the style you want to play. Just to put in perspective, I played this game back in the day multiple times. I'm playing it now, and I'm in Chapter 4. I've never used Tailwind one time in my life.
Do you hate fun? You're a DC guy. You should love Flash mode.
My favorite subclass for Ramza by a mile is martial arts from the monk class, because it has the best combination of abilities to have as a subclass. He can heal with it himself and others. He can give magic points to himself and others. He can do all sorts of attacks at distance, including Shockwave, which is one of the best abilities in the entire game for doing damage. And then it can just throw it on him when he's playing a armor class where he's heavily armored and has a ton of hit points already, like Dragoon, which is the best class in the game by a country mile. And I don't need to use something like, Tailwind or whatever. I get rid of the Squire stuff about 2 seconds into the game and never look back.
Wow. I might have to try martial arts. Go ahead, John.
Me and my ninjas wearing amazing evasive capes. I want to fight. I want to fight your
awesome.
Dragoon party with my ninja party. We'll see what happens, right? Like that's what the next thing.
But I'll be able to jump on you from 8 miles away before you can get anywhere near me, other than throwing your stupid little stars.
But every time you jump, my speed's so high, I'll just move out of the way. Bam.
So it'll be a draw. No one ever gets hurt.
There's ways to deal with everything in this game. The flexibility is staggering with what you can do in this game as far as arranging abilities and equipment and job classes. It's almost infinite in possibility.
The first 2 or maybe 3 missions I played with Dragoon, I was like inadvertently hamstringing myself because I for some reason, I don't know why I thought this, but I thought if I moved, I couldn't jump. So I literally was just like, I was literally, and there was one of them where the terrain was like not helpful either. And so it was just like, I really did nothing that entire battle with my Dragoon. And then it's like later on, I kind of finally realized that it's like, oh, I could move all the way out here and then I could jump. And it's just like, I'm an idiot. I don't know why I came up with this just random like constraint that didn't exist, but that's just what I thought in my head for some reason. I don't know why.
It's crazy that you think this game is so hard, Burns. So
I promise you that wasn't part of why I struggled with the third fight in the game.
So here's my sickness with this game that I'm trying to avoid in this playthrough. I can be very linear in my thinking at times, and when I first played this game, I wanted to go class by class and get every single ability and like master that class before moving on. Yeah, John's eyes just got huge. So like when I got to the end of Act 1 the first time, I had a team of squires and chemists, and like they were awesome squires and chemists. They could do all the squire stuff, and like I could cast like Echo Worms and like Maiden's Kiss and all the stuff that you frankly do not need at that point. So like I remember a friend watching me play that battle. He was like, what is wrong with your brain? I'm like, I don't know, man. I just like checking all the boxes, and like it feels good to go all the way down this tree and then move on to the next thing. So I'm largely trying to avoid that this time.
So one thing that is one of the hidden tricks and tips I'm going to give everybody that, Tom, you may not have realized when you did that is it actually made your team so much more powerful, because when you have, let's say you have 2 squires, or if your whole team was squires and you do a squire action, right? You gain jab points in your squire. The other squires get job points as well.
Yep.
So I had no idea.
It is this thing, like if you're gonna power level, or if you're gonna go through and you're gonna like, hey, I really want everyone to have auto potion, just make them all chemists, right? And go to an easier map and like just like beat each other up and throw potions at each other while there's one goblin that's like hiding in a corner, right? And then great, now everyone has auto potion. So
sounds super satisfying, like the way the game should be played.
Just break it, right? And now I have the skill I want, and I can go and I can destroy all the boss battles. It's fun.
Okay, my gripe with this battle system. The frickin' having to wait forever for things to turn into items. And it's just like, it's so annoying. It is so annoying. And I think the other part of it that's more annoying is, especially if you have a guest character, well, good luck trying to get any of those items, because they're just going to go and mercilessly kill whatever it is that you're trying to keep alive. And so you're just like, you know, in those side battles where you're just fighting a bunch of random creatures or maybe some random rogues or whatever, you can maybe finagle things to do that. But even then, it's just like, I just start getting bored by a certain point, and it's just like, I don't know. It's just like, maybe I don't need these items. Maybe they don't matter.
They don't. That's
don't.
the thing. They're nice
the
to get,
items
but
don't.
they really don't matter.
Although, right? So one thing they did different in this remake that I love when I found it out is, when you are fighting enemies and they die, right? They either turn into a treasure chest or they turn into a crystal, right? The treasure chests are usually right? Phoenix down, a potion, whatever. But especially early on, if they turn into a crystal, right, and you go stand on it, it restores your hit points and your magic points, yay. And if they have any skills you don't have, you get the option to learn said skills. And in the original, you got to pick one, right? So you would be like, let me pick one. I was like, sweet, I'll go get this skill. And all of a sudden, I got like 6 monk skills. I'm like, what? This is crazy. Oh my gosh, Ramza's now a destroyer of worlds at like level 4. Let's do this. Because like, I just, like the CPU had a ton of great skills. So like, I've, now whenever I'm fighting any battles, I'm like, let me go ahead and like cast stop on the guest character so they don't go take my crystal, right? Mm-hmm. And then I wait for everything to die and then go collect loot and get skills.
So, it's funny because the crystals are nice, like being able to get those. 9 times out of 10, the character that I have go grab it is getting stuff that like I wasn't planning on speccing that character towards. Like, there was one time where literally I grabbed one with my black mage, he was a time mage at the time, but I used black magic most of the time, even as a time mage, and it was like 4 monk abilities. And I was like, that would have been awesome for like one of my more, attack focused characters to get. So now I was like, okay, I'm going to leave this other crystal for them because it was the same type of guy that got killed. So then it's like, okay, well, they should hopefully get those abilities too. They run up there and it's just like HPMP. And you're just like, oh my gosh, game, why do you treat me so?
I think it's safe to say that like the job system is still the rock star of this game, and what I'm hearing all of us say is it's still fun. Like, it is awesome to, every time you do a thing in the game, whether it's swinging your sword or taking a potion or casting a spell, you earn job points, and that gives you the currency to buy your other abilities. That's still fun, that's still awesome, and it's still great to choose your class, buy those abilities, and then mix and match the classes. One other note that I had, I've been really trying to do things that I hadn't done in my first playthroughs in this game. So like, I played the Mystic for the first time as Ramza, which seemed like a worthless cast because it's mostly like status effect magic. I was pleasantly surprised at the utility of that. At the end of Act 2, there's back-to-back hard fights, and I went into it with Ramza as a mystic, and so like, oh, well, my spells don't do anything, so I guess I'll use my Squire abilities to try to buff the rest of the party. And like, I was just getting my butt kicked again and again. But then once I went on the offensive with the mystic, it's like, oh, I can turn dudes to stone. Oh, I can put dudes to sleep. Oh, my hit point ceiling ability really hammers this boss at the end of Act 2. So it's like, there's a lot of effective tools in the toolbox. It's just going into battles with with enough skills chosen in that to give yourself a chance.
So the one time where I felt like a stone cold genius playing this game was did you guys ever level up guest characters?
No. Hate them with a burning fiery passion. They're on their own.
Well, so like Argath, no, I was never gonna upgrade any of his stuff. I think I might have given him potion so that or set it up so he could potion people, so hopefully he'd at least stay alive.
Nope, he just stole your potions.
Yep.
Which it's
used
fine.
them on himself. The jerk.
The potions are basically like water in this game. I mean, I always have like 35 on hand or whatever, and so I just roll that way.
I have 99, but they cost me money, so like I don't want Argath just like burning them, because like he can't turn into a crystal. If he dies, it's fine. Like those are for the party members that I could potentially lose and lose all that progress, which isn't like go to the store and buy another soldier type situation. It's like, oh, I'm gonna have to restart this game. At least that's how it was back in the day. Now you can just try from the start of battle in 10 seconds, and it's much less cumbersome. But like losing a character back in the day was a complete reload. Like it's like, oh, they're level 20. I'm not just gonna buy a new dude and start over.
Well, I upgraded Mustadio when he was a guest character and gave him Seal Evil, and it was right before the battle where you're in the poison swamp. And he frickin' turned all those like goat head dudes into stone, and it was like, I'm a flippin' genius. I love it. And that battle, it was also the first time where I had a character with Beastmaster fighting alongside like a chocobo, and it was like, oh, okay, cool. Because I have them whenever they're like standing by each other, the chocobo gets Choco Asuna, which is perfect for the poison swamp mission. And so it was just like, it's I don't know. It's the thing I think that I enjoy also is just continuing to find different things and try different things. And sometimes you're like, okay, really shouldn't have done this now. This wasn't smart. But other times it pays off, and it's interesting and it's fun. And so yeah, I've been really enjoying digging into things and trying new things and trying to think outside the box every now and again. And yeah, I don't know. So far, it's been a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to seeing where it continues to go.
Yeah, I mean, don't write off your summary quite yet. We're not quite there. Let's jump back in our time machines. When Final Fantasy Tactics, the original game, first launched, it was a huge risk. Square followed the blockbuster Final Fantasy VII with a slower, more cerebral tactics game. It ditched crystals and destinies for a class struggle and moral ambiguity. It demanded patience and punished mistakes. Mike, does this remaster capture that same ambition, or does the modernization kind of dull some of that edge?
Well, it's tough because, I mean, a lot of the magic of the game when it came out was, for a lot of people, this was the first game of this type they ever played. I mean, there were tactics games available. Mm-hmm. I mean, the Ogre Battle series existed and the Shining Force series existed, but it was very much a niche, at least in this country. And because Final Fantasy was big on the PS1, when this game came out, a whole slew of people who never played this type of game picked this up.
Like me.
You can't really recapture that at this point in time. And it's certainly not as punishing as it was then, through all the different quality of life improvements we've talked about. But I still think the ambition in the story and the way it's presented, there still haven't been a lot of stories that have really been as hard-edged in the ideas of class struggle and, you know, the cutthroat nature of, you know, battle for leadership in a medieval setting in the way this game does. Even now, very few games have really gone that far down that path.
There's a really interesting video from, it's Final Fantasy Union is the YouTube channel, and they did the history of Final Fantasy Tactics, where they sort of delved into how it came to pass and everything. And it delves into some of that, and basically
I
the
believe the
guy who.
director of this game directed one of the Ogre Battle, maybe two of the Ogre Battle games before this.
Yep, Ogre
if I
Battle
remember
and
correctly.
Tactics Ogre. And then he was looking to go to like a bigger company, and Square was hiring, and so he went and got the job at Square. And he didn't know before he took that job that Hironobu Sakaguchi, the godfather of Final Fantasy, the creator of Final Fantasy, had been tossing around for a few years the idea of doing a tactics game for Final Fantasy. But then he was in the middle of doing Final Fantasy VI and Chrono Trigger and just didn't have the time to do it. But then when Matsuno came on, that's kind of when it went into there. And it's fascinating because there's like a little blurb where that video talks about like an interview that Sakaguchi did, where he like went into one of their sessions where they were talking about the story and was like looking at the whiteboard where Matsuno had all of the characters sort of written on it. And like the thing that like struck him was how, it doesn't just have like these connected lines that say friend or enemy between them. It's like all of these other like nuanced things where it's like, this person just doesn't understand this character. And it's like, he's like, it was so much more in depth than he ever thought. And it was by far the most amount of characters that they ever created in a Final Fantasy game. Like unique characters.
Oh, the cast is immense.
Yeah, and so it's really fascinating to kind of see how it all just sort of came together. And having Matsuno, who came from the outside, and then Hiroyuki Ito, who was like the person who created the active time battle system, was a big part of the battle system with tactics, and saw it as like the opportunity to take the job system that he felt he had kind of perfected in Final Fantasy V and just sort of take it to a next level in a different type of game. And so it was just kind of this coalescence of all of these different people that ended up making something so interesting and so different than what a lot of the other Final Fantasy and a lot of the other games that Square Enix had put out up to that point. And I think that's a lot of the reason why it was, a cult favorite for so long. And I mean, the month that it came out, it was only out for a week, and it was the 9th best-selling game in the U.S. For the remake. So I mean, that's also pretty cool.
Well, do you think a remake or a remaster that just treads the same ground then does a fair job of capturing the legacy of that original game? Like, it was such a trend-setting thing, or such an outlier in its time. Like, is a remaster doing the original game justice?
Yeah, I mean, I think so, because it makes it so that it's playable. I mean, in order to play it, you either have to have a way to play the digital version of the PSP game, or you have to spend $100 and have a mechanism to be able to play a PlayStation game in 2025. And so I think given that fact, having it at least be playable, and it's like it wasn't necessarily a small feat. They didn't have the source code for the game anymore, so they had to develop the game entirely from scratch, basically just using a version of the game to kind of reverse engineer how it all worked and basically code it from scratch again. So yeah, I know. I think it's good to have it.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. Final Fantasy Tactics is why I own both a PSP Go, which was a very short-lived device, and why I still have a Vita that has a charger sitting near my desk. So, like, I am thrilled to be able to play it on my PS5 now. John, what are your thoughts on if this remaster captures the same ambition of the original game?
It's interesting. It actually kind of, like, this game feels a little bit smaller, right? And maybe that's just because, it was so amazing at the time, right? When this came out, I think my only other, kind of knowledge of tactics games was like Vandal Hearts at the time, right? So there was some tactics games out there, and that's really the only one I had ever really played. So it was like this new thing, and it was so huge and like such a bombastic, like we talked, like all these characters and this crazy job system that you can do all this stuff at. And now, I've seen that, right? And now I think like we do have other games that have such a much like even heavier focus on strategy, right? Even like you look at like, you know, diving into like Tactics Ogre, which is like a remake of the game that this was actually like, you know, this is the spiritual successor to the original Tactics Ogre. If you play that remake, it, you know, and I want to get back into it. I haven't completed that. Like,
It's
like,
deep.
You can see the connective tissue between them, right? Because you have the same people creating it, but it's way, you know, more strategic and difficult and deep. And like when coming from Tactics, right? It's crazy to say that, but like it's just that hindsight of like, yeah, it's not new anymore. It's not this like, whoa, crazy, amazing thing that we're seeing. I still think though that like the whole package here makes it shine brighter than any other kind of tactics game that you have. The way that they weave the story together and the way that they take like Final Fantasy and like the core, like here's a crystal, here's the chocobo, here's these characters, and tie it all together. Like it is like such a, you know, perfect package, right? And I just also, you know, love Ivalice. I'll tell anything Ivalice, so it's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, this is a much safer game now than it was back in the day. The Final Fantasy brand is huge. It's worldwide. There are other noteworthy strategy games out there, but it's an established, if somewhat niche audience. So it's a safe game, but I'm just happy to be able to play it on the PS5. So Burnsy, what stands out of the first half of Tactics Remake as we get ready for our Part 2 discussion next month where we wrap up the entire game?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've touched on it a little bit, but I think the voice acting just takes everything up that extra level, and it helps to... It's kind of like whenever you hear Shakespeare, too. When you hear somebody who's really good at acting Shakespeare, it like actually doesn't seem like Old English. It like makes sense. And, you know, when they're using kind of this sort of more stilted, older English speak a little bit, like reading it doesn't always necessarily sink in as much as having a professional deliver the lines. So I think it really does help the story become more impactful when, you know, you're getting those lines delivered. I think also it's fun to see, you know, the voices and how well they match up to, I guess, what your thought of the character was from when you played them before, and whether it matches up completely or if it's a little bit different, but it still kind of works. I think that's fun. The other thing I like about it is that they added voices for, and it's not, you know, obviously each of your generic characters that you just hire from wherever don't have their own unique voices because they're all just like randomly generated. But they have enough different voices there that it seems like they all have their own like different personality. And with the errands, when you turn in the errands and then you get the reports from them, like I just love that part of the game because you just hear from these people that you don't really hear from, and they're talking about, oh yeah, we did this, it was a great success, blah blah blah, and they're really not saying that much, but it's so fun to just hear them reporting back after they come back from the mission, and it adds a lot more than I ever would have thought it would to that like aspect of the game, which is really just a little side thing. So I don't know. I think all in all, like the amount of voice acting they did for it added so much to this game.
Yeah, I have to second the voice acting. That was one of the big things, like, you know, in the remake that stands out. Like when you talk about, obviously there's the quality of life, like having your tracker on the left hand side telling you who goes next. Chef's kiss. Love it, right? Like in the original, having to go around and like look at people's CT to figure out who's going next and that was a pain. So seeing that, fantastic. Or even like the little number over their head, so I know, oh, this is the guy that's number 2, and if I like that, like saves so much time. Love it. But like the voice acting, you know, just to add a couple more things to what Joey said, like even like, you know, with all the small characters, you start to pinpoint who's more lowbrow and who's highbrow. Right. So when you're talking, you're walking in somewhere and it's like a night for like, the northern group, and like they have this, highbrow accent. If it's like one of the guys from the Corpse Brigade, they have this Cockney accent. They're like lowbrow and they're like, different. Just the way they talk is different and everything. So it like really brings you into those characters and into that story. And the other thing I really love about this game is just the overall pacing. And one thing that the remake has reminded me of is just like kind of how bloated our games are today. Because I love the fact that like I'm going to turn on my PlayStation, I'm going to just click on that, and it's going to bring me to the next battle, right? And I'm just going to have a fight, and then there's going to be some story, and then I'm going to go to the next fight, and there's going to be some story. I'm not wasting any time. Every moment that I am with this game, I am doing something I want to do. Even like the only downtime I'm still enjoying because it's me going through menus and selecting stuff and picking things up. Like the only thing that like isn't that is when you're running errands, and like, they did tweak that as well. It used to be that you couldn't flee from battles. So when you were running around, right, you couldn't just flee. So you would basically do your errand and then go find an area where there was 2 towns next to each other and go back and forth to minimize your random battles and then run back, right?
Yep.
So like they removed, but again, they respected my time to say, we know what people are doing. They're just going to go run over here. So like, let them do that. And I love that. So like, it's nice to go back to something that still reminds me of what I loved about it as a kid. Right, has a bunch of quality of life, and is a good reminder of like good game design that we should probably get back to today.
Did the original PlayStation version have the ability to fast forward through like enemy turns and stuff like that? So that's also really nice.
Yeah, I do that
Especially when it's,
nonstop. Like I wish that was the default mode.
Yeah. So it's just like hold down R1, and it's just like, all right, let's get through these, people all moving around and hitting my dudes so I can actually do stuff again. That's super nice.
War of the Lions had that, but it's not as well done. So what's nice about this version is it just speeds everything up, but like the music and everything all stays the same. In War of the Lions, it was basically fast forward mode. So the songs would be playing, it'd be like, right? Like it wasn't as streamlined, right? So it's much nicer now where like it just zooms through and it's a much better like start stop motion. Yeah, I use it all the time. It's great.
Yeah, another improvement from War of the Lion is the tactical camera. You can hold on R2 and like see exactly on the grid. Like trying to play War of the Lion on the Vita that doesn't have like a second R2 button, R2 L2 button, like it could be hard to manipulate the view to see exactly what you needed to see.
Try playing it on a PSP. Like not the Go, original PSP. That's where I played it on. That's a tiny screen, and you're like, oh, I hope this is the right angle. Darn it, picked the wrong square, missed him.
Yeah, PSP Go was pretty miserable too. I'm glad I left that stupid thing on a plane and got a Vita instead. Mike, what stands out to you from the first half of the remake?
I'll third the motion on the voice acting. It's funny what you said about the faux Shakespearean, because I was once lucky enough to see a performance by the Royal Shakespearean Company in Stratford-upon-Avon doing Shakespeare. Mm-hmm. And good acting brings so much life to old-fashioned English in a way that it's hard to explain if you don't experience it.
Yep.
And I would say these aren't actors at that level, but nonetheless, having good voice acting does make the dialogue and the delivery better than it ever was when I was just reading it to myself. Mm-hmm. Beyond that, yeah, I totally love the way they've streamlined. You can, if you get in random combat and you don't want to do it, you don't have to fight it. If you want to restart because you don't like the way it started, or you realize your grouping doesn't work, you just restart, and you can either restart just at the beginning of the fight, or you can go back to the before the fight and reset your group and change that around. It's just there's so much just quality improvement in the way it flows, and the way you can get through things if you want to go do it more quickly. They just make this game infinitely easier to deal with than what we had back in the day. Not that I'm gonna say that it was a bad game back in the day, because that's the way things were, but man, I really appreciate the improvements they chose to make.
I mean, how much of our lives did we waste to just reloading Final Fantasy Tactics over and over again? Yeah. I think you guys are maybe
multiple saves.
I think you guys are maybe a little higher on the voice acting than I am. It's fine. I'm glad that it's there. It's nice. But like those time-saving things, like being able to instantly restart a battle or flee battles, like those are just amazing. Everything about this game, I've enjoyed playing one of my favorite games of all time again. It's been great. But here's one quibble that I have with it. I bought digital, and I actually wish that there was an instruction manual that explained the iconography. For example, there are accessories with icons that give you a percentage. I don't know exactly what that's helping. I assume that it's physical and magic defense, but I looked around all the menus. I tried to find a glossary, and I could not find a space that showed what all those icons are.
Yeah,
it's either evasion or parry percentage usually.
Yeah, it's evasion, so it's magic and physical evasion. If you really look at the icons, it has like a cape kind of moving, and then it's like a sword or it's a wand or a rod. So yeah, that's what it is. But yeah, they don't have anywhere that I could find where it actually explains those in game, even in like the menu with all of the different explanations of everything. They didn't have what the icons meant in there.
Yeah, and that was just like a little frustrating. I guess maybe an oversight because like games used to have instruction manuals. I swear this is the first time that I've like ever wanted a manual for a game. Before we get into our hopes for the final two chapters of the game, I wanted to read some notes from Jim, friend of the show and Patreon supporter. Jim has completed Final Fantasy Tactics for the first time in his life playing the remaster. Good for you, Jim. He enjoyed it a lot and a few mastered classes from 100%, so he nearly 100% of the game. Here are his thoughts on Final Fantasy Tactics. Then we can take a moment to discuss them. He says that the job point boost skill feels basically mandatory for a first-timer, and therefore it is dumb and should be removed, and the skills should just be cheaper. He says the damage... Oh, go ahead.
I would say I actually agree with him about like JP boost being just kind of a silly thing, because it just becomes a wasteful thing where you're like, I just leave it on all the time, or I just level up way slower. So I can see that there's a little bit of risk reward for having it and you lose it. But I do like the slow burn of like, no, you got to go grind to get your skills, because if you get too much too soon, you're too powerful.
Yep, and I disagree. Like, I want job point boost on Ramses so I can hopefully master every single class with them. So, disagree vehemently. He also says the damage to health ratio is off. Teammates and baddies shouldn't be able to be killable in one round.
Wrong.
I don't agree with that, but okay.
He also noted Zodiac incomparability is fine, except for the raise spells. It sucks to lose because your white mage is incomparable and you lose 3 coin flips. I don't know what that means. Am I not there yet?
All right. So like basically there's a couple systems that they don't explain very well, right? One is faith and bravery, right? And that's like, if you have high bravery, you're good at attacking. If you have high faith, you're good at magic, right? So there's that. But there's another thing where like when you like create your main character Ramza, and you get to put in the birthday, and the whole point of this is zodiac stones, right? The astrological signs. And there are certain, like if I am a Pisces, I can't heal a Virgo for crap, right? Like they are just not compatible signs. So if you're healer, like that is the one thing that like if you're really min-maxing and you're building out your party, you need to like recruit people that you can make sure my healer can heal these other people. Because if you not, then like, it lowers the percentage chance of like heals and spells hitting those people.
Okay. Let me just freaking explode and do a ball of fire right here. So like, this is my all-time favorite game. I had no idea this was a thing. I don't know how Jim like clued into it, like being a first timer, but God bless you, Jim.
The instruction manual in the original game?
Maybe, and like
it is in the instruction manual.
I noticed that there were people that like sucked with healing, and like I noticed that there are people that I am more able to turn into stone as a mystic, but I had no idea what those percentages. I thought it was all brave and faith, and I didn't understand how brave and faith normally tie together. I assumed faith helped white magic. Outside of that, I had literally no clue.
Yeah, it's all about like that's why they tell you everybody's little sign on their character sheet, and it really at the end of the day doesn't matter all that much to me. You can really control it for your own party and like make sure that like, yep, I have a better chance of healing on my people. So that's where you can like play the random generator and recruit a bunch of people, and like your luck of the draw with the people you fight, right?
And there's a page for each zodiac sign in the where it talks about it's the advanced rules or whatever. And there's a page for each one, and it tells you these are the ones that it has really good affinity with. These are the ones that are the opposite. And then it will heal these like for double, unless it's a creature, then it won't work at all or something like that. Like it is just some bonkers level stuff of how it all works. And I started looking through that stuff, and it's just like, I'm not going to remember this in the heat of the moment. I'm just going to steamroll ahead.
Ito made some crazy math stuff with that where I'm just like, dude, you didn't need to do this.
That's a dumb system. That is a bad system in my favorite game. So like, okay, there's a blemish on Final Fantasy Tactics. Thank you, Jim, for pointing it out, because I had no idea that I hated this thing that exists. But I do. I hate it with a burning, fiery passion. Story missions where people die before you act are annoying. Not just an objective person, but like teammates too. Like, we talked about that a little bit earlier. Like, super annoying when the AI like has the person you have to protect run immediately into the hornet's nest. Like, oh, this looks like a good place to stick my head. My go-to squad was a dancer reducing enemy speed and bard increasing mine. So I haven't unlocked those jobs yet, but I'm familiar with them from back in the day. And his last note, unkind word, Argath.
Yeah. Yeah. Universal.
All the homies hate Argath.
Yeah,
right.
and like, I mean, he's an important device to move the story forward. We're all supposed to hate him, so good job. Argath is what he needed to be.
Serves his purpose well.
So thank you, Jim, for sharing your thoughts on Final Fantasy Tactics Remaster. So our last thing we're going to discuss before wrapping up here, John, what are you expecting and hoping for over the final 2 chapters of the game? You're in the 4th chapter. Like, what's your hope for the back end of this game?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm looking forward to just opening up all the jobs and just really, really breaking this game. I mean, I'm gonna platinum it. I have a goal to platinum all Final Fantasies, right?
Good luck
Which
on
I know
14,
it's
my
insane.
dude.
Yeah, that might be the only one I don't get. But like this is gonna be the first one, right? So like I'm enjoying just like everything about it, and I'm really excited to kind of get into like the end of chapter 4 now, because there's just some really fun battles and some really cool set pieces that I'm just looking forward to.
Burnsy?
Yeah, I'm just interested to sort of see where everything goes from a story perspective, and then seeing what it is I can do with some of the later jobs that I haven't unlocked yet, and just sort of messing around a little bit more with some of that stuff. I guess I did have one question for you guys. As somebody who hasn't played through the back half of this game, what are some tips that I should be following to not screw myself over, or to at least keep myself prepared for obstacles that might be coming later on in the game?
It's not like it used to be where you had to be really careful, because there's a few story sequences where you get into a sequence of battles where once you start, you cannot exit out of them. You are in until you get through. Now, first time through, I actually had to restart the game because I got into one of those, didn't realize what was happening, and I simply wasn't good enough or high enough level, or my jobs weren't good enough, and I couldn't win. Now, they've made this a lot easier to deal with now with the save system and stuff, so I doubt you'll ever fall into that trap. But I would recommend, make sure you have a solid mix of jobs where if one grouping isn't working for one of these tough battles, you have some flexibility. Don't lock yourself in where character A can only be this, character B can only be this, character C can only be this. Have each of them have a fallback that you can switch to give yourself a lot more options in various battle scenarios.
Don't sleep on accessories. Right?
That
It's
too.
really easy to just be like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and just put I'm still wearing the battle boots I had from the beginning because I like +1 movement. Like, don't sleep on capes. don't sleep on, stuff that like makes your like, the bracers that give you like +3 to strength and like other things too. Also, like poach and hunt, man.
Poach is great.
Poach and hunt, and look, don't be sad about killing your animal farm. Right? And what I mean by that is it's okay to have a bunch of chocobos in your stable and bring a couple with you to a battle, kill everything, and then poach your own chocobos. Right? I do have to say, like, so there's like these little pig things you fight, right? And my daughter came in the room when I was playing, and she's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm just farming." And I walked over and I killed it with poach, and they actually do a death scream, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, you killed that poor pig," and it disappears and everything. She's like, "What are you doing?" And it's the cutest little like pig character in the game.
Yeah.
I'm like, "Yep," and he's gonna make a great weapon, honey. She's like, "You're a monster."
I was gonna say the game already guilts you when you're just like kicking them out of your party because next thing you know, you had one chocobo, and the next time you look, you have 4 of them in your inventory. You're just like, okay, gotta get rid of some of these, and it already guilts you into feeling bad for getting rid of them at that point. I can't even imagine just like dragging them into like a combat and then leaving like one goblin alive so I could just slaughter my chocobos.
That's right. You get those red chocobos, then you go ahead and you can get some great stuff from them. You got to do it, man. So don't sleep on those things. Those are great ways to like get some really cool loot. Like I poached like some of those like big bull characters you get right after you like get Mustadia in that swamp area. And like they gave me like this air dagger. I was able to like build an air dagger that like is still one of the best daggers like in chapter 3, chapter 4. So it's like I got that at like chapter 2. So you can get some really cool gear that moves you along and keeps your characters moving. Also, like use the fitting room, right, to like auto equip, but don't take the fitting rooms like best for like what you should do. Right? Oftentimes, like you can do like an auto equip for your jobs and stuff. It's super useful, but it will oftentimes just say, "I'm gonna like just give you the thing with the most hit points," and you're like, "No! I don't want my mage to have the most hit points. I want him to have the most magic damage. He can be more of a glass cannon." So watch that stuff closely and use the other quality of life thing we didn't talk about is use your loadouts because it's really quick then to switch between stuff. So create your poaching team. Right? And like, yep, I'm going to roll through and I'm going to go steamroll some chocobos in the swamps or this or that. And then like, you can quickly switch back to your like, what you're working on and what you're building for jobs or your story battle team, that sort of stuff.
That's all good advice, John. I haven't done any of that stuff yet. So what I'm hoping for in the back half of the game is just to be good enough to finish it on time for our discussion next month. So I wrote down some things and I appreciate that feedback. Mike, what are you hoping for with the last of your time with Final Fantasy Tactics Remaster?
Well, this game has some side missions that you can kind of work into. They bring back an item and it opens up a new path to somewhere that you can go to. And you can recruit some secret characters that way. One specifically that's a really interesting person to have appear in the game. I'm not going to spoil it, but we'll discuss it next time. And I just want to make sure I get all those done and get all those characters. And then I'm really looking forward to the end of the story because original version, the end of the story goes to some pretty interesting places, but I feel like the translation in 97 obscured a lot of the effect of that story because it just was fairly poorly translated. So I'm really looking forward to this translation and how the end of the game resonates with a better translation now.
Yeah, let's play some more Tactics. One correction from something I said earlier in the show. I've also completed Final Fantasy 2, and not the Pixel Remaster where you can speed anything up, but like the PlayStation version. So like that was a slog, and I deserve credit for it. So go Tom. That wraps up our discussion on the first part of our discussion on Final Fantasy Tactics by Square Enix. Next month, we're going to wrap up our discussion and see how this legendary story concludes. On the main podcast feed, we just dropped our Star Wars Battle of Hoth episode, Burns' favorite board game of all time, and next month we'll return with our annual video game movie review, covering movies from 2019 to 2025. That's not right. It's like 2015 to 2019, right? Is that the window?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, we're covering the timeless classics that are like Tomb Raider and Detective Pikachu and Warcraft. It's going to be a hoot. Jumanji. And then in January, we'll switch gears to board games and break down one of our favorite mechanics. So we hope you'll jump in and play some Final Fantasy Tactics Remaster along with us. Please support Outsiders Overrated at patreon.com/OiO. Until next month, stay inside, kids.